Good choice.
Thank you. All right. So here we are at Pirkei Avot, chapter 2, and we're at Mishnah 2. We're in the middle of Mishnah 2. It's a long Mishnah that Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, Rabbi Judah, the prince, the patriarch, offers. And before I forget, today is the 14th, right?
Yes.
And that means that next week we will not meet for Bitesize wisdom and for Talmud study, because we have, hopefully, with all the weather cooperating, we have the Purim, pick up the Shalach Manas bags and enjoy yourself with entertainment and so on. So that's happening from 10 to 12 next Sunday morning. So we will not be meeting next Sunday morning. So, okay, back to this. So Rabbi Gamliel, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, has told us a number of things. The main part of that we looked at last time, the main part of his first half of his message is that there needs to be some kind of combination between Talmud Torah, the study of Torah, Torah itself, which means also the practice of Torah, with Derech Eretz and Melacha, with practical activity in the world and with working in some kind of material way to deal with the world. And what's at stake, he says, is avon, is sin. That if we don't achieve this kind of integration, and if we neglect the practical and the physical and the material world and our behavior therein, if we neglect that, then all of our preoccupation and all of our involvement with Torah is not going to save us from sin. So a very eyebrow-raising kind of statement. And clearly, he's talking to a certain audience, right? Who is he focusing on? Is he trying to get the farmers to study more Torah? Is he trying to get people who are tradesmen to devote some time for go to a Zoom class every week? Is that what he's trying to encourage people, Lynn?
It sounds like he's trying to encourage people who study Torah to go out into the world more. So
right. Right. Yeah. So, and that's actually always, when we look at these different teachings in Pirkei Avot, we can ask ourselves, who is the first targeted audience? Is this teaching specifically to Torah specialists or to judges or to rabbis? Or is it meant to be for all of us? And of course, Pirkei Avot became a popular book to study and to cherish. It's a beloved book because the entire Jewish people found it to be meaningful, but different teachings have a little bit more of an emphasis, clearly, at least at the beginning, one way or the other. And here, certainly, the top part of this Mishnah is emphasizing the requirement of those who are already engaged in pious behavior and Torah study, that they need to mix it up a little bit, that they need to get it more combined with other things. But it does also, as we read it, it also affects our perspective on what kind of Torah we should respect, what kind of people who study Torah should be the ones that we should perhaps pay a little more attention to. And that doesn't always happen, because there is a tendency for people to see somebody who purely is involved in study as the holiest person that there is. And it was brought up already last week, in parts of the Jewish community, let's say the ultra-Orthodox world, pure Torah study is unbeatable. And nobody would put on a pedestal above a rabbi who does pure Torah study, a rabbi who mixes it up. So this teaching, to the extent that it should be meaningful to everybody, is has its own mixed record of success. And it was already pointed out that historically speaking, in many periods and in many areas, rabbis were not exclusively engaged in being rabbis. They always had another way of making a living. That gradually disappeared or became a very trivial phenomenon as the world got more and more complicated, and it required people to if they wanted to be serious about rabbinic leadership, really spend more time on it. So now we're at the second half of the Mishnah. And the second half of the Mishnah begins with the words, V'chol ha'oskim im hatzibur. So all those who labor or who are busy with the community, etc., etc. However the translations are. We'll go to the translation again in a second, but what here it's explicit. Here it's explicit. I'm talking, says Ram Gamliel, I'm talking to a very specific cohort, very specific group of people. Okay, the community professionals, the community workers. Okay, so let's read that half of the Mishnah one more time to remind ourselves. And we've got our sources here for the various kinds of translations. So who's going to read the more common widespread translation type? Okay, Geraldine, there you go.
I don't know exactly where you want me to start. To study alone, or
No.
all who serve?
Yes.
All who serve in behalf of the community should do so for heaven's sake.
For heaven's sake, God.
Their work will prosper because the inherited merit of our ancestors endures forever. God will abundantly reward them as though they have achieved it all through their own efforts.
Okay. And now the alternative translation. Who's going to read it for us?
I can do that.
Thank you.
The alternative translation is quite different. Do not profit from community service. If you promote the welfare of all, you tap the merit of the community. Your efforts will endure, and God will credit you as if you had acted alone.
Okay. So it's complicated either way, and it's hard to keep the two variations clear in our heads. But we're talking about people who are working for the community. Serving the community is the translation we have in the first translation. And what's this? What's the first phrase there?
Do not profit from community service.
Community service. Okay, so again, the word service. As I said, in the Hebrew, the word is oskim. Oskim means engage in, busy themselves with. We have that word also with regard to Torah. We say the first blessing that we recite of the three blessings for studying Torah at the very beginning of our traditional prayers every morning is Betzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah, to busy ourselves, to engage in the study of Torah. Asek is something that you busy yourself with, and literally that's the word in busyness, business, right? So things that you are occupied with and preoccupied with. So people who are spending a lot of time with taking care of the community should do so. The first translation is for heaven's sake, right? Which means for the sake of heaven. And that's the positive. And in Rabbi Shapiro's translation, the negative is, no, you're muted.
Come on. Sorry. Do not profit from community service.
Okay, so what would be another way to say it? Some kind of ulterior motive, right? So don't do this for any other reason except for the sake of heaven. Okay, so profit is also a vague term. What kind of profiting could a person get? What profit would the person derive from being a community servant?
Another line on your resume.
Yeah.
Another line on your resume when you want to go into the for-profit sector. Yeah, what else? Yeah, Josie.
Having spent a career in nonprofit organizations, it's the stature that you get. Everyone looks up to you. Look, he's the CEO of, international organizations.
Okay,
That kind of feedback.
right, all right.
Boy, do they love it.
Yeah, so not necessarily using this as a stepping stone to get someplace else, but to be seen as, wow, look at this person who's a not-for-profit, devotee. So the benefit that they get is the high regard that people see them in. Anything else? Any other ideas?
Money.
What would it be a bad motivation to serve the community because it makes you feel better about yourself?
That seems pretty innocent to me. If you're not, as long as you're not harming anybody else, you're serving the community. And if you get to feel better out of it, that's kind of an ancillary benefit.
Well, I think that some people who go into, working for nonprofits, they would want to do that work anyway, and it sort of aligns with how they want to live their lives. So that seems a reasonable motivation, as long as you're then not sort of self-aggrandizing, and using it to see I'm better than everybody else because I do all these good deeds. Okay, well, so.
Okay, so let's think about those things, and now in light of those ideas, take the next phrase, right? So it says, whatever, busy yourself, serve the community for the sake of heaven, not for your own profit, whatever that might be, emotional, financial, societal. And then it says, shizchut avotam misayatam, b'tzidkatam omedet la'ad. All right, so the translations there are, back to Geraldine one more time, the merit.
Their work will prosper because the inherited merit of our ancestors endures forever.
Okay, so their work will prosper is a phrase that's not literally in the text. The text really literally.
I have a different translation.
Okay, one second. Just the text literally is work or serve for the sake of heaven, she, for the merit of their ancestors, etc. Okay, Sarita, what do you have?
So that's more like what we have. For them, the merit of their fathers sustains them, and their righteousness endures forever. So it's like two things, whereas Geraldine seems to be all combined together.
Okay, so let me say, what's the for? What's the then? What's the then?
The merit
there's an if then.
Yeah.
If you serve the community for the sake of heaven, then, or if you're thinking about how to serve the community, remember, for after all, etc. So what's exactly being said? This is a compound statement. The first phrase is connected to that second phrase.
Yeah.
Doesn't the first phrase stand by itself? Do the right thing for the sake of heaven. Don't have any ulterior motives. Don't try to do this for your own aggrandizement, for your own profit. Do it for the sake of heaven. Period. Good. Got it. Thank you, Rabbi. Keep it short. But no. Instead, Rabbi Gamliel goes on and says, and I want to explain why I'm saying this. And now our job is, how do we understand this next phrase about the merit? What is this about? How does this explain anything? Whose merit?
It's more immediate because this is your parents and your grandparents. I mean, this is, acting sort of in their name as well. And also therefore, it's to their merit, and people will see that, oh, your parents raised you well, or, it's like, right, that, so their righteousness endures. Yeah.
So their righteousness means whose righteousness?
Your parents, I think it's more immediate than for heaven's sake. This is, it also is to the credit of your parents.
So who's the your? Let's be very specific.
Each of us.
So what you mean we, Sarita, to quote a famous joke? There are two groups of people referred to in the beginning of the statement of Ram Gamliel. The two groups are the public, the community, and then there are the community servants. Those are two different groups. Now, obviously, in some sense, the community servants are part of the community, but not quite completely the same, right? They are a certain category of people that are identifiable, and to a certain extent, possibly even an elite, right? So, and that's why they're being warned, do this for the sake of heaven, right? So when we say their merit, whose merit? Which of these two groups?
Well, Rabbi Shapiro is direct. He says, you tap the merit of the community.
Right. So he answers that question in his translation, right? He says, let me remove any ambiguity, right? And let me say that we're talking about the community. The merit is the merit of the community, right? On the other hand, he fudges something about where the merit comes from, right? The word in the original is avotam, their parents, their ancestors, right? So we would understand this as being the community's ancestors, the community's parents.
No, it's the parents of the people who are employed by the congregation.
Okay, so that's your alternative,
right? So yeah,
we could go one way.
I was taking that as a message that each of us could take this as a message, but if you read it literally, then it's their fathers have to be specifically the fathers.
Who's the pronoun they're going to?
The people who are employed with the congregation.
All right. And I think most people would say the opposite. There means the people in the congregation, in the community. Their ancestors' merit stands for them. And let's get to the second part of the phrase. V'tzidkatam omedet lad, and their righteousness stands forever. Right? So again, is it their righteousness, the righteousness of the community servants? Or is it the righteousness of the people who are being served? So again, most readers have gone with the community as the referent. And when we ask a question, so why is this added? What does this actually push in terms of what is it? What's the extra piece that it gives to that first statement? So when we say do this for the sake of heaven, work for the community for the sake of heaven, what kinds of work can we imagine this being referred to? Let's talk about that now for a second. What does it mean? Who are the community servants we can start listing?
Oh, rabbis.
Of course.
Yeah.
The political leaders.
Who do you think this is referring to?
Well, the political leaders.
Political leaders. Okay. Who else?
Yeah.
Teachers.
Teachers. Thank you. Who else? So
in the modern world, public administrators.
Public administrators. What are they administrating?
Justice.
The affairs of the community.
What does that mean? That's very vague. Give me some affairs of the community.
Police. The people who are in charge of the police department.
Now we're getting a little more down and dirty. Now what I'm trying to say is actually we're sort of taking the first half of Rabbi Gamliel's statement, and we have to start diversifying who we start thinking about in terms of community service, right? How about sanitation workers?
Sanitation, firemen.
firefighters. That's what we're saying,
Firefighters,
right?
sorry.
And that becomes too divorced from the beginning, because he is talking about people who are studying Torah, then going into the community. So I guess it's interesting to think about, how broadly is he advocating the work that they do within the community?
Right. So
Isn't
I'm
it
gonna
two
bring
separate
one.
people?
Yeah, maybe not. That's what we're trying to sort out. Yeah, Lynn.
I thought we had said that it's two separate groups. It's those who study Torah, and then also you other group, this is for you. So this piece of advice is for you, and then this piece of advice is for you who are already working in the community. Is that, did I read it wrong?
Well, it's all what I'm saying. There's overlap and distinctions at the same time. Is this a federation executive that we're talking about? Is this a person who, as we said before, runs a not-for-profit? Many of the commentators talk about the welfare administrators. What if you're one of those people that runs a welfare office? Okay, so now that's a hugely important job. And here's where I want to make a very, very strong connection with this statement about the merit. I think that many of us are familiar with the possible the phenomenon of a person who works for the community and is disgusted with the community, who looks down at the community. I just saw a movie that just came out called Judas and the Black Messiah. So it just came out. It's a very, very bitterly powerful, it's a fictionalized account of a true story. And it shows how the FBI, murdered Black leaders in the name of serving the community, right? You can serve the community and have utter contempt for the people that you're supposed to be serving. You can give out the welfare checks, or do the medical work and serve people who are desperately in need of your service, and look at them with a very jaundiced eye. So one of the ways to read the connection between the two is, just remember, buddy, this community has merit in and of itself. They are people who have had parents and grandparents and ancestors. They are fully human with a culture and a history that stands by them. You never imagine that they are below you. Let their righteousness and their standing always be in front of you, so that you will be able to serve them for the sake of heaven, and not out of some kind of sense of elitism or condescension or whatever. Sarita, yeah.
I just had an example from the documentary that we just posted, Hungry to Learn. There was a woman in a homeless shelter. She shared a room with her father, and she, for a couple of days, stayed with her boyfriend. And when she got back, her father had been kicked out because the parent couldn't be there alone. And she said, he's not alone. I just wasn't here for a couple of days. But the person who was administering this was being so bureaucratic. And I don't know if it was so much looking down on them. It's just, this is my job. This is what I do. And not even seeing the impact. So it's just that mindless, bureaucrat kind of, bureaucratic implementation of policy. Yeah. But not thinking about, why are you there? Who are you serving? What is the shelter for? And just totally losing sight of that. Yeah.
Right. And what makes it easier to do that is not to take that person in front of you seriously.
Yeah.
As a full-fledged human being. Josie.
I think we may be seeing some of this in the vaccine distribution, where they keep saying poor brown and Black communities are not getting their fair share. And what is the attitude of the people who decide where it's going? Are they saying, this group isn't worth it? There's a lot of controversy of how it's being distributed.
Right. Yeah, this and as I've said many times, what the pandemic has done is basically the pandemic is a magnifying glass for all of the problems that have existed before the pandemic. All it does is it makes those problems even more obvious, more acute, more in need of being addressed. But those kinds of inequality issues and those kinds of attitudinal problems, they were there before. And now what happens with the pandemic is they come home to roost. We see the devastating effects of the kinds of fault lines that are within our community. So that would be one way to read this. Who are the ancestors? So the ancestors could be all of our ancestors. And of course, traditionally, many of the readers read this as our ancestors are Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. So we start with that in the Amidah, the daily prayers that we recite again and again and again, always, no matter what else changes, Shabbat, Yom Kippur, Rosh Chodesh, Purim, it doesn't matter what day it is. We always start, the first thing we say is, I'm standing before you, you are my God, right? And you are the God of our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and you remember all of the good things that they did so that they redound to our credit. Yeah, Sarita.
So I just wanted to put it all together. We were talking about who's being talked about here. And I think we started with, this idea that people could be studying Torah, and that's what they do, right? That, and they're not out in the community working. And if you're doing that, you might sort of think of yourself as I am engaged in the highest calling. And then this is saying, no, that's not sufficient. You also have to be within the community because, in fact, just studying Torah can lead you to wrong views and perhaps looking down at other people. And when you therefore go and work in the community, you shouldn't take that view with you. Well, I'm better than everybody else and I'm doing this because I have to. You see these other people as your equal and remember that you are working for them and with them. So I do see this as all connected and talking to the same people.
Yeah, good. I want to really quickly, we only have a minus 5 seconds. The very last phrase, just to use it, just to touch on it now so that we can go on to the next one next time. And that is, and you, as for you is my translation, right? Ma'aleh ani aleichem sachar harbe. I will account for you great reward. You have different translations here, whatever, right? As if you have done it. Ki'ilu asitem. So how do we read that? There are various ways to do it. One way is that if we're talking about community servants, one of the things that a community servant always has to cope with is, what did I accomplish? What did I actually do? If I gave the welfare check to the client, so I gave out the money, but what does that do exactly? If I got more computers out to people that need to be connected in school, in that way, okay, but are they using it? Are the computers effective and so on? What did I actually do? So here, what the one way to read this is, when you're helping other people do what they need to do, that counts for you, right? Your job is to facilitate. Your job is to help other people doing it, and that's going to count for you as if you did it, right? So don't belittle the kind of vague sense of the system that you might be in, and take heart that if you're doing your job honestly and for the sake of heaven, you'll be accomplishing something. right? It'll be, God will give you the credit as if you actually really took this person by the hand and got them back on their feet. All right, we're going to conclude now. And next week, as I said, we're taking a break. And I hope we'll be able to get back together again in 2 Sundays.
Thank you.
Stay
Okay.
safe, everybody.